just be honest with yourself. How am I really tracking progress? Why am I making a change that I think I'm making? And do I have a plan for knowing if it's done what I hope it would do?
Right.
And if you don't have that plan, is it really worth your effort?
Bringing you a reasoned approach to health and fitness. This is the Phi Life Podcast.
Welcome to the Phi Life Podcast. I'm John Barber, and with me is Brad Pilon. And today we're going to talk about tracking your progress as it relates to fitness and I guess diet and body composition.
Good call.
So we're just going to jump right in here. There's different things you can do. The most obvious is the scale. Are you going up and down in weight? It's usually where most people start and stop, especially for weight loss. They don't even think about anything other than, is the scale going down? And we've done recent episodes where we've shown the scale can move, but your body composition can get significantly worse. We just did an episode covering a client who was on Ozempic, lost a bunch of weight, and ended up losing a bunch of muscle mass, and his body fat was 24% at one of his lightest body weights, when he used to have his body weight or his body fat at 10% at that same body weight. So in that case, he believed he was progressing really nicely based on the scale, because he remembers the last time he was at that weight.
Right.
And yet his composition was significantly worse, a lot less lean mass, a lot more fat mass and visceral fat. Like it wasn't a good composition. So the scale did not reveal at all his composition. So in that case, the scale was quite limiting, even though it was moving in a direction he was hoping for, because he was at the time focused on weight loss. So again, so that's the main, most obvious example, but I want to tackle the things you can track that are free or super, super cheap and easy versus the things you could track if you have a little bit of extra money to spend on it. And this is a linear scale. It can just get more and more expensive, but do you really need to do it?
Yeah. Do you remember the experiment we did where we did a workout, and during the workout, I drank 4 liters and change of water. So in the course of one workout, I gained 10 pounds of lean mass, which was just a horrible experiment to do, but just kind of showing the scale can fluctuate dramatically. So it's your starting point, like you said, but it should never be on its own. Right. We should always be adding to it.
All right. So I'll start off with all the free things, the super simple, cheap free things. So the scale, obviously the scale can move. And that can tell you at least something. You're at least getting heavier or lighter. That's one thing it can tell you. The very next thing that's super, super cheap is circumferences. Just get one of those it's called a myo tape. You look it up on Amazon or something. It's like maybe, I don't know, $8. And you can put it around your shoulders, your arms, your waist, your legs, your neck, whatever you want.
Even just a cloth measuring tape, right?
Or cloth measuring. But the myo tape is a cloth one. It just kind of locks itself in. So you don't need like another set of hands. You can kind of do it yourself. Yeah. And that combined with the scale can tell you quite a bit.
Now you're rocking. Yeah.
That's a good proxy if you can't afford like a DEXA scan or something that tells you your body composition more accurately. Your body weight combined with circumferences can at least give you an indication if some of that weight is muscle or not.
Yeah.
You could also do a super cheap like plastic caliper. They're not going to be super accurate, but you can at least use them as a reference, a relative reference. So what did the calipers tell you last week and 2 weeks from now? And okay, who cares if it's not accurate on the exact amount? If the caliper's pinching less and it's the same caliper, there's less fat in there. Same caliper.
So the skin calipers people use to measure the thickness of your body fat right under your skin. They then plug into this massive equation to give you an estimate of your total body fat. But you really don't need that. You just need to know if, here was 12 millimeters thick 3 weeks ago, and now it's 9 millimeters thick, and my weight has gone down and my circumference has gone down. That all points to my body fat levels going down.
Right.
So yes, you don't need the magic equations. You just actually need a really good set of calipers that are millimeter at a time. Yeah. Or 16th of an inch, whatever.
Right. So the next thing that could be added to those, so the scale, the tape measure, and if you work out with weights, strength in the gym, it's an easy one that could be added. Now, again, this is specific to anyone who works out in the gym with weights and knows how to test their relative strength on the different lifts. So if your weight's going down, your your waist circumference is going down. Maybe your arms and leg circumference and shoulders are going up a little bit. Plus your strength is going up in all the lifts.
Great sign.
It's another indication that muscle mass is maintaining or even maybe going up while fat is going down. And that's not 100%, but at least it's another clue.
Yeah.
The mirror. The mirror is a super useful one, and it's probably
same
the
mirror,
one.
Same lighting though, right? Like it's
very good point. So same mirror, same lighting, same time of day. As long as those three things, you can kind of figure it out. So I don't know. First thing in the morning, the same daylight at wherever the window is, plus the same light, stand roughly at the same spot, right in front of the same mirror. That's actually a decent comparison visually, day to day. Now, I wouldn't do it you're going to see yourself every single day anyways, but I wouldn't quite judge it maybe any shorter than a week interval on where you're going, because your look can fluctuate quite a bit day to day just based on water content, what you ate the night before, that sort of thing. But the mirror is the other one to add in that grouping of 4. So like weight, strength, tape measure, and mirror.
Yeah.
If you're not going to use anything else, and I would imagine most.
I would say pictures also. Like, because then you're the problem with the mirror is I know every mirror in my house. I know exactly how to stand, look jacked in that mirror as I walk by it, like subconsciously. Whereas the pictures are a bit more like you don't know how to stand, and you get the awkwardness, and there's a bit more unforgiving. So pictures can be a good tool too.
I remember with a lot of our contest winners, we determined if you stood in front of the mirror and judged what you look like, and then you took a picture of yourself in that exact moment, your perception of the look in the picture is totally different than the mirror. Even though it's you. For some reason, we don't perceive it. Try that. If you're listening right now and you don't believe me, look at yourself in the mirror if you want to do this, and then have someone take a picture of yourself right there in that same moment, and then look at the picture, look at yourself in the mirror, and look at the picture. And in many cases, you're gonna be like, oh, actually, I'm seeing these two things differently.
Right. Interesting.
And it's not quite gonna. The pictures actually might even be better as a moment in time.
Right.
Maybe there's something going on psychologically. Also, in the mirror, you're seeing a reverse, a flipped image of yourself. You're not actually seeing you're seeing yourself the wrong, like as if we flipped this screen right now, like backwards. Right. So you're not actually seeing yourself as you are. You're seeing yourself.
You're seeing the mirror image, if you will.
Jeez. Anyways, so there's something going on there. So a picture in a mirror, let's call that two different things. It's visual, but it's still two different things.
Yes. Yeah. And with the camera, you got to be careful because the different settings on a camera can dramatically change your shape of your face. You can look very weaselly-like, that sort of long nose, long chin, and it can actually sort of brush you out. So whatever, it doesn't matter which one you use, you just have to use the same one consistently.
Yep. Yeah. The next free cheap one is your clothes. How do they fit? I mean, we all know how basically every single item of clothing fits. And if that fit starts to change, then you'll know, like if it's tighter in the waist, you're like, oh, my waist is getting bigger. If you have to loosen your belt or if you're tightening your belt, right? That's a super obvious one. But just how everything fits, like how your pants fit, like all different shirts. Those are good indicators because you know how each shirt and each pant and whatever else you wear fits. Like you just know what it feels like. So if that feel starts to change, you're like, something's changing. Like something's changing.
We had a buddy, a mutual friend in university, who was trying to convince me that he had gotten taller because his pants were shorter, but he'd gained like 20, 30 pounds. And it was just the curvature of his behind was, his pants had to go around that, so they were shifted up. So he was like, "No, man, I'm like an inch and a half taller than I was last year." I don't think so. But but clothes do give it away if you're being honest with yourself. Yeah.
Yep. It's a good point if you're being honest with yourself. Other things like heart rate, you don't even need a heart rate monitor. You can just test your pulse and count the heartbeats in 15 or 30 seconds, and then just calculate out your heart rate. So if your heart rate's changing, I guess your resting heart rate typically goes down as your cardiovascular fitness goes up. So that's
one thing. Weight loss, right? You're pumping. It's less work to pump blood around the same body, so smaller body.
Yeah, that's basically free. I suppose if we want to stick with things that don't cost anything, you could go do your blood pressure at like a pharmacy where they have a little blood pressure stand. So you at least have to
Yeah.
find your way there. Maybe some gyms even have it now. But I don't think that costs anything. I don't think they charge you. You just sort of just go. So that's another health indicator that doesn't cost you anything that you can check anytime you feel like it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. You got any other free ones? That's a lot of free stuff that can give you a pretty good snapshot of where you're headed as far as body composition and some general health. Oh, another one is just your sleep. Like, are you sleeping any better?
Yeah, that one's hard because if you're dieting hard, sometimes you're not. And if you're overeating, the gain weight for some weird reason, you're not. I really rely on the first three. So the scale combined with my circumferences lets me know, okay, I'm going up or down, and are the areas I want to be shrinking or growing, combined with the strength in the gym on exercises that I'm used to and not new at. Because if you're all of a sudden trying a new exercise, you're just gonna get better at it quickly. But if you're just doing your standard bench press, like everyone typically does bench press on the same machine, and you've gotten stronger and it's not new to you, you've probably built some more muscle. So those are kind of my main ones. And then we kind of go up from there and add things in. But that's a good list of free ones. Let's hit the expensive, but not like bank breaking expensive. What would you go?
All right. So for that, some sort of Fitbit or Apple Watch or the Aura Ring or something like that can test your heart rate throughout the day. It also gives you a good indicator. They typically have some kind of sleep function, like how your sleep went. They do some calculations to estimate if you spent enough time in REM sleep or deep sleep. I don't know how accurate they are, but they can give you at least a rough idea. Again, relative. If it gives you an 85 sleep score one night and a 40 the next, doesn't really matter what that means absolute. It means for you, based on the metrics it's trying to track, you more or less must have had a better sleep one night than the other.
Right.
So it's, and the thing is, if you wake up, you're like, oh man, I feel lousy. And you look at it, you're like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. It gave me a 40 for last night. And if you wake up and you feel great and the thing says you had a 90 sleep score, you're like, oh, maybe this thing's accurate. But sometimes it might not quite add up, and it could just be how you were lying or it wasn't quite measuring. So I wouldn't, if you have one of these things and you wake up feeling great, but it gives you a lousy sleep score, I wouldn't convince myself, well, then I must have slept poorly. Like if you feel good when you wake up, you must have slept well. So I wouldn't.
Yeah, feeling good is the goal there, right? Yeah.
Right. Oh, and that's another thing I was going to say. Feel in general is what I think almost everyone works off of. Well, I just feel better. Like that's important. That's obviously really important because it's kind of one of the major things we want is to feel better. So that's important. So feeling better, waking up from sleep, feeling strength is it's a measurable, but it's also a feeling. You can feel strong. You can feel like you have more air, like you can feel like you can breathe deeper and pull in more oxygen. There's lots of things that can feel better, just less aches and pains, less sore. There's a bunch of things where feel itself is one of the free ones. But anyways, back to the cheap paid things. So some kind of Fitbit thing is one of them. You could test just hundreds and hundreds of different blood labs. And at least in the United States, you can order them on your own. I just use altalab.com. It's pretty easy. And anything you want to test, you could test your, it's just, there's no point even listing it. You can literally test anything you want. And that can be as cheap as $20 for like a glucose test or insulin, all the way up to $1,000 or $2,000 to test like 200 different things. Now, you probably wouldn't even know what to do with all that data, but if there's one or two things you're actually thinking about, like well, heavy metals, something like there's different things you can test, and if you have a reason to be concerned with it, like insulin resistance or your lipids, like were you hoping for your cholesterol and lipids to improve, you can go order that test. It's like $100. It's not that big a deal. Now, obviously, if you want to go through insurance and have your physician on board and have your insurance cover it, that's fine. But if this is a little pet project on your own and you've got a couple $100 to set aside and this is the detail you want to get, you can test just about any blood level you want. And
would you go with I'm staring into space. Would you go with what do you call it? A body fat measuring scale? Yes or no? Yeah. BIA, right? It'd be
there are
conductivity.
bioelectrical impedance.
Yeah.
I don't know I can't remember what it's called. There's the one you stand on and it spins you around and it gives a 3D image. I've
That's
done
cool.
that. I think it's called In-Body, and I've done one of those back to back with a DEXA, and it's pretty close.
Okay.
So if we're okay, so DEXA, that's to me the most useful one for body composition.
And you can still get a DEXA scan for about $100 in the States, right?
Something like that.
Yeah.
Depends where you go, but they're kind of, if you just search DEXA scan near me, you're going to find something probably within an hour's drive. As long as you're near, at least sort of near a major metropolitan center, I think you can get to one.
Yeah.
And I would say, as far as money spent on body composition, that's the best money spent.
Yeah, I would prefer a DEXA twice a year over anyone buying a scale that supposedly measures body fat. It's just a much better number. It gives you the, is it in the arms, legs, torso, body fat, but also gives you bone mineral, which is really important. So that seems to be bang for your buck in that lower sort of cost range. That'd be my number one, I think.
Right. Me too. Yeah. And then, so that would be a composition one. After that, you can get, like all the different blood testing, and then you could get quite specific with other kinds of scans. You could do MRIs and all that kind of stuff. Direct scans of your heart. Like there's all kinds of scanning you could do. At a private clinic, I had an ultrasound done on my carotid artery, and we actually found some plaque. So that one was like $400. So it was, that's not cheap, but at the same time, we're not in the thousands, right? Some people's copays, their insurance would be close to that for some of these tests.
Right.
And that was an important thing to find out. So there's different things you can do, and it all depends on how much money you actually want to spend. But
what you want to measure, right? Like what you're concerned about.
And what you want to measure.
Yeah.
And what you want to measure. But I guess the point of this whole thing is, if you're taking any action as far as exercise, as well as like manipulating your diet, changing your diet, like putting real effort into it,
if you're putting an intervention into your life.
Yeah, like a serious intervention where, like, oh my God, like I cut out this type of food, I've changed my eating patterns, I do some fat, like all this stuff. Do you even know where you were starting? Do you know why you're doing it? And are you testing anything other than, I just feel better?
That's feel better and the scale moved. That's it, right? Like, it's just
almost everyone just leaves it at feel better, scale moved. But okay.
I had a conversation with he was one of the first kind of glute guys. Remember when glute training became like super, super popular? Not that it's not popular now, but it was new. And I was just going back and forth. And I'm like, what, like in terms of circumferences, what kind of changes have you seen? And he's like, I don't measure that. Like, you have hundreds of people, hundreds of clients, and you don't get just a simple circumference. And he was like, yeah, no, it's a good idea. So it's funny what people go off of. Just, I think it looks better, and I look in the mirror and it looks a bit bigger, so I'm happy. And you're like, you intervened, but you didn't measure to see if there was a result. You just kind of trusted I think I look better, or my coach said, yeah, it looks different. Like you need more than that. I think there always has to be, if there's going to be an intervention, there has to be some sort of measurement.
I mean, if your goal was just to feel better and the scale to move, and that's all you ever cared about,
that's great.
Then that's all you need to measure. Yeah. But if you start reading about what something can do for your blood glucose, or if you start reading about what something can do for your cholesterol, or what it can do for any of these other, we read about a lot of this stuff, and you don't measure it, how do you know if it's doing any of that? Like, let's say you pick up a berberine supplement, you think it has something to do with your blood glucose, but you never tested it before or after. Would you?
Testosterone supplements, same idea, right?
Are you just wasting your money? Like, what did you do that for? Now, if you just took it and all you committed to yourself was, I just want to see if I feel differently on it, okay, that's fine too. But if it's something you're taking in a relatively high dose, and it could potentially have a side effect, it stands to reason it's worth testing the main effect and the side effect. Because if you're not even getting the main effect,
you're risking all the side effects known and unknown
without even getting the main effect. At least, I'm not even saying
the main effect.
Yeah, at least test the main effect. I'm not even saying you have to test all the side effects, but at least test if you're getting the main effect. So but again, that's based on how invasive you want to get and how much information you're hoping to get from all of this testing and what you want to do with it. So I guess it's just be honest with yourself. How am I really tracking progress? why am I making a change that I think I'm making? And
Yep.
do I have a plan for knowing if it's done what I hope it would do? And
Right.
if you don't have that plan, is it really worth your effort?
That's the thing, right? Because it's not going to be the miraculous overnight change. So you have to have some sort of marker of improvement or not improvement. So it is worth just having something to test. And to your point, if that test just I feel significantly better than I did last week, that's great. But if that's not what you were looking for, you should probably just have some sort of measure, some sort of pass fail indicator.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, this is just for you to be efficient with your time and your effort, and if you're
Yeah.
and money if you're intervening. And I guess the last bit is don't cause another problem without at least knowing, or at least don't bring up another risk without at least knowing you're getting the effect you were hoping for in the first place.
Yeah, that's a huge one too, right? So just if you're doing a risk benefit analysis, you should at least know the benefit.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
Like in my super simple example, we've already podcasted on this, was I'm taking niacin for reducing my blood lipids, and it really, really reduces my lipids, but it causes liver enzymes to go up and causes stress on my liver. So now I'm in the middle of, and I've tested both, and I'm in the middle of taking a milk thistle supplement to see if it's going to reduce the liver enzymes, the liver stress, so that I can continue staying on the niacin for the benefit of the niacin on my lipids, and also get rid of the side effect of stressing my liver. I just went for the blood test this morning, so in the next 4 or 5 days I'll have my answer.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and if the milk thistle works, me and my cardiologist want me to stay on the niacin because I'm having such a good effect on the niacin.
Because you knew the risk and the benefit, right? So that risk would have been disastrously scary if you also didn't know, but your blood lipids are improved dramatically, right? So it was a benefit and risk sort of calculation.
If I only just tested what it did to my lipids, it's a home run. I'm a hyper responder. It's just.
But if you only tested your liver, you'd be freaking right out. Right. So,
and if we didn't bother testing my liver, and I stay like, this thing's having a way more potent impact than statins ever would on my lipids.
Oh, wow. Really?
Super potent. Again, not everyone responds this dramatically. I just happen to be a hyper responder. Mm-hmm. And which actually, I think my cardiologist was just thinking it wasn't going to work. He's like, yeah, go ahead, test it. And I think he figured, and then we're going to stop. And then he's like, oh, geez, like this is really working. Yeah. So now he really wants to try to manage the side effects. But if I'd have never tested the side effects, I could be going years on this stuff for how potent it is on my lipids, thinking I'm totally reducing my risk of cardiovascular disease while I'm going to eventually give myself, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease at some point. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So that's just a good example of are you getting the effect you even want? And if there is a side effect, find out what it is, measure it, and decide, is it worth trying to mitigate that side effect, or is the thing, whatever intervention it is, it either stays or goes based on, but you have to test if you're going to go that dramatic with a particular intervention. In my case, I was going very, very high dose with this one thing.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. Yeah. I don't know. You got anything else?
No, I like it. Like I like that first grouping. And then I'm all for a DEXA when needed, right? It's especially really important right when you're starting, just to get an idea of what you're starting with. Mm-hmm. And then to your point, I think all the blood measurements, if you're going to be doing something purposely to try to intervene on one of those measurements, you should kind of know the measurement. I think it's funny to me that people don't do that, but they don't. So I think it's great advice as well.
Yep. All right. So that's a good place to leave it. So for Brad Pilon, I'm John Barbin, and that's your Phi Life Podcast.